Are you looking for an escape from manufactured truth wrapped in selfish agenda? Don't you just want to have a real and raw conversation, all masks and rules aside? That's what you're getting here at Titan Evolution Podcast. Get rid of all the nonsense information and discuss everything under the sun without filters. Listen to real stories of real people who will put your current perspectives to the test, guide you on living the life you truly want, and see everything free from judgment and pretenses. Time to get rid of those unhealthy environments and let your authentic self shine. Here are your hosts, Travis Johnson and Carol Carpenter.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Travis Johnson. That's Carol Carpenter, and our guest today is Val Foglesong. Val is an Army veteran, registered nurse. She's got a passion for inspiring others by sharing her trials, epic failures, victories, and wild adventures. She believes vulnerability is the path to healing, and she likes to stab stuff way over there by using archery. Val, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. What about you?
I mean, if I was any better, I'd be twins.
Oh my God.
I don't know why that comment is bad. Ladies, you both did the same reaction.
I mean,
why is that
because
bad?
it's a dad joke. It's like a dad joke.
Yeah, that's the only reason I became a father, so I could legally tell dad jokes.
And bore people senseless with them.
It works out because my wife is very punny and she giggles all the time. I just, just like little hearts shooting out of the camera.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So happy.
That's the cutest.
Yes. We all know that I'm very cute and very serious. That's why we wanted to have you on today, Val, and talk about all the magic that you are and how you got built the way. Tell us a little bit about yourself that we didn't cover in the intro.
Okay, so I mean, I have had lots of adventure in my life, so it just depends what you want to hear. First, we can start backwards if you want. So currently
I
I
usually
find
like
myself,
to do it backwards.
I do
Oh
lots
my
of
God.
things backwards.
What?
This is going to be a great time. So I have a story for you guys later that if I feel like you can handle it, I'll tell you. But
She's talking to you, Carol.
So going
Please.
backwards. So I currently find myself in a situation where I am a registered nurse. I work as a clinical coordinator in the operating room. I have lots of experience, different things. I just recently did hospice, went back to the OR after taking a little break from it. I've done ER, I've been a medic in the Army. I've done nothing but healthcare. So I don't know anything else. But that
except for how to
mean I
take care of that amazing curly hair.
I know.
Yes.
Oh my God. Stunning.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't
It's
know
really
anything
huge.
else? That's a ridiculous comment.
No, I'm saying I don't know anything else about doing things the way they're supposed to be done is what I was trying to get at. So I've done all the things backwards, including nursing school, including how I got in the military, all the things. So my biggest thing is just making sure that I want to make sure that people that encounter me know that if I can do something, then you can do it, because there's nothing magical about me per se. It's just been my response to the things I've been given and the things that, I can control what I can control. What I can't control, I have to make a decision. So I've made a lot of bad decisions and I've made some good ones. So the combo of those landed me here.
Well, you just said you didn't have any magic in you, which kind of takes away the question that I ask is what makes you a Titan? Those qualities of Val.
Yes.
Everything you've done is the fruit of. So what makes you a Titan?
I really love this question, actually. And my answer has changed probably 15 times over the last month, just thinking about it. I've really been pondering this. So I think what makes me a Titan is that I'm still standing, first of all, that I'm still standing after all the things that I've done that have knocked me down. I'm still standing, and I'm not afraid to believe that I am still standing because of the intestinal fortitude that I have to not ever give up, ever. Even when my back was against the wall or everything said, you're not going to survive this, I'm still freaking standing here. I'm still here. And I'm resourceful. I think that even in situations where I didn't have the best resources, I found out how to get it done. even if it meant going back to the drawing board and recreating the wheel, because like I said, I do things backwards. So when I was told I can't do something and you're not allowed to do this because you're a girl, or, oh, you shouldn't do that because of XYZ, or, oh, you can't join the military, oh, you can't do these things. Tell me I can't. Watch
Oh,
me.
that's the fire.
So,
That's the fire right
I'm like,
there.
you know, okay, I'm not going to allow myself to be pigeonholed.
Limited.
Yeah. So I'm still standing. There's been some touch and go moments, I think, with anybody who's been through some shit. Like I know I've listened to both of your stories, and I know that you can probably relate to a lot of stuff that I went through as far as the recovery of it. Like actually having trauma happen to you, even if it's not big trauma, trauma is trauma. Like you can't be defined by that. And it's so cliche, and I hear it all the time. And I admit I've rolled my eyes many times when people have said that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but it's just something we had to do. We had to put our pants on and go out the door and make a choice, because nobody's going to come and save me. Nobody's going to do this for me. I got to do this hard work myself. And I can take God with me, and I can take my family with me. At the end of the day, I have to choose, am I going to face this, or am I going to lay down? So I'm still standing.
Yeah, I love that, right? You've got that fortitude and that resilience. And you say you don't have any choice but to do it. Well, let's be honest here. A lot of people choose the other choice.
Yeah.
That they're going to be victims. It's now some kind of badge of honor to share your victimhood with everyone. And someone has accused me of that when I share my story. And they're like,
there's a difference though.
Yeah. Does it sound like I'm looking for your sympathy and I want you to coddle me and, be enraged on my behalf? And they're like, no. I was like, then it's not what you think it is. It's a story of victory, not the story of victimhood. It's a big difference. Only a couple letters difference. We'll start with Vic. Right.
Yep. And I have, 2 teenage daughters, and that's what I'm trying to teach them, is that this stuff that happened to me it's just stuff. Like, we're going to move through it. We're going to push forward. And when you make mistakes, and I'm going to let you make those mistakes, hopefully with a safety net, so you're not traumatized, but shit's going to happen, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with it and to go forward and take criticism, and just little things that, I didn't have the best education. I wasn't very well spoken. I had to come from behind to I'm not the same person I was obviously 25 years ago, but to be sitting here where I am now and be able to have a conversation and feel like I have something to say that maybe somebody needs to hear, because I needed to hear those things when I was younger. And I got some bad advice, and I got good advice. I didn't listen to some advice. I wished I would have listened to some advice. And some of the hardest
when you're young, it's hard to discern whose
you think
advice,
you know everything.
Right. Is good advice, right? And you just, based on what you know, you make a choice. Yep.
One of the doctors that I worked with, so when I was in the Army, I worked in like a surgical clinic, and we had multi-specialty in there. So I was kind of the girl in the clinic, like, I was the only female, did all the surgery scheduling, all that stuff. And this doctor was old as hell. He had to be like 80, but he was a civilian, and he was contracted, and he hated everyone, absolutely hated them. But he liked me because I would talk crap to him. So I was like, wasn't afraid of him. And after a couple of years of working with him, and I was moving to another state and getting out of the military and all the things, and I asked him for a reference, and he said no. And I'm like, why wouldn't you give me a reference? I was totally shocked by this, because we got along, and he said, I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to want to hear this. And mind you, I was like 20, maybe 22. And he said, you're a smart girl, but you act like an idiot. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, and I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, but he wasn't wrong. He's like, your language, the way you carry yourself, he's like, you're better than that and smarter than that. He's like, why are you doing this to yourself? And I, at the time, was really pissed. Like, what are you talking about? But I still, to this day, hear that advice. He's like, if you don't take anything I said, I'm not giving you a reference, because you're embarrassing yourself. And I'm just like, oh my God, what are you talking about? But he wasn't wrong. He was not wrong.
Sometimes it takes somebody like that to be very straightforward with you for you to get shocked. It's almost like, you know, you need the shock to realize, wait a second, I didn't like what I heard, but shit, he's right. I've got to make some changes.
Yeah. And he said, until you go to nursing school, I'm not writing anything for you. Cause I'd given up on nursing school because I was like, well, I'm too stupid. I took this math class.
Oh, but that's the
and all these things. Yeah.
Language with yourself is super important. I mean, if you talk to yourself like that, you believe it.
Yeah. That thankfully is something I learned a long time ago, but I just remember thinking like, how could he say that to someone? Who says that? And years later, I'm like, oh my God, that one conversation changed the trajectory. And he wasn't even nice about it. Like, he wasn't like, hey, I care about you. I want to tell you some things. He was like, look, you're an asshole. Stop behaving that way. Quit. Because I had told him, you know, I wanted to go to nursing school, but, you know, I was giving up on that. I mean, who gives up on a dream at 21, 22 years old? Like,
a lot of people.
You think it's all over. Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of people too. And I'm like, this is over for me. I didn't do well in high school, you know, I all this stuff. And then of course, you know, you want to blame, well, I had this trauma to overcome and I didn't think it was trauma, so I'm just going to drink myself silly, like all these things, thinking like, okay, school's out of the picture for me. Well, it wasn't, thankfully. Yeah. So
that's just not true, is it? We lie to ourselves all the time. I know I lie to myself on a regular basis. You know, guys like walk by the mirror and they're stuck in their gut and you're like, yeah, still got it. Or girls like find the tiniest flaw and they're like, oh my God, everyone's like, both of them are lies, right? Both of them have nothing to do with it. I've had dozens of people tell me to fix my shit over the years because you just don't see it when you're in the box of you. You don't see that stuff. It takes an outside perspective. But what's interesting about yours with the grumpy doctor, he was the only one that said anything. That means everyone else in your life was okay with letting you live your lie and not really giving a shit about you.
Yep. And I didn't realize that for a long time, but that's something that I started to look at. I mean, I didn't take his advice for a little while. I mean, I had to really like, no, he's wrong. He's not, I'm not behaving that way. But then I started really looking at, you know, I sent him an email or something and he wrote back and said, this is what I'm talking about. Read your email. And I reread it and I'm like, yeah, I do kind of sound like an uneducated ass. Like I need to learn how to have those communicate. Yeah. And so for a lack of better choices, I just was like, okay, I don't have a choice. I'm either going to keep going down this road. I can be a phlebotomist forever. If there's anything wrong with that. But that was what I launched out of the Army to do because shocker, they lied. I didn't get to do all the things that they said I would get to do.
Yeah.
But I got out.
Phlebotomists, they run like blood screening tests.
Blood draws and stuff. Yeah. And I was like, he's wrong. He's not wrong. I am smarter than this. And I think and I'm watching these nurses, I worked at a doctor's office and I'm watching them and they're just amazing people. And I thought, I can do that. I want to do that. I've wanted to do it since I was 5. Why would I give up on that just because I made a couple of mistakes?
He used reverse psychology on you. Like,
which makes me mad that I fell for it, but I'm happy.
I know, because he totally did the full, I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to tell you.
And I think he knew that about me for sure. Yeah. Like I said, you don't tell me I can't do it because then I'm going to do it. But, but I went to the college, right? And I took the placement test and I did not place well. And I knew I probably wouldn't because it's been a while since I've been in school and I hadn't been doing anything that whole time in the Army to educate myself. I felt like I was just surviving, to be honest, and the guy laughed at me at the desk. He actually laughed at me and said, boy, you really didn't like math, did you? I was like, what? So I had a choice again, either let that discourage me or just be like, screw you, dude, whatever. So I ran into this lady at the school who said, the time's going to pass anyway, because I was crying. I was upset. I was mad that I was going to have to take remedial courses and this is going to take me forever to get my nursing degree and all these things. And she said, the time's going to pass anyway. So just take a class or two at a time. It's going to pass regardless. And also good advice. So I did. I made a printout and made a list and followed that list to the T. And it took me almost 6 freaking years to get my degree, but I did it. And I highlighted every single class that I took, but I did it backwards because nobody educated me and I didn't have any knowledge to even ask the right questions. So I didn't know to go to the counselor and say, hey, what do I need to do first? I just got the list and I started going to classes. So I took stuff backwards. I took pathophysiology, which is the study of like the bad things that can happen in your body, but I never took anatomy and physiology. So I'm learning things backwards, the things that go wrong in your body. And I don't even know the way that it's supposed to go. And I somehow managed, like, I don't know what I was thinking, but I took remedial math. I had to learn fractions. So if someone like me can do that, you know, it's never too late. And I graduated with honors and awards in nursing school. I found out that I'm not as dumb as I thought I was. And if I gave myself...
You never were to start.
Yeah.
It's that story we tell ourselves, right? I'm still largely a jackass. I love telling jokes. I love cutting in with the punchline. I love being the funny guy. And someone asked me in the last like 2 weeks, they're like, what would happen to you in your world if you were serious all the time? And I don't know exactly how he meant that. So I was like, what do you mean? Like not funny? He's like, no. He's like, what damage would you do to yourself if you took yourself seriously? Like you really were engaged and with it and didn't cut up and laugh. And I think his point for me was that I was using the jokes as a smokescreen or a mask. And he's not wrong, but also I love fucking getting laughs. Right?
Yeah, sure.
There's so many terrible things that happen in life, and you know we're going to get into your story here a little bit more, and it's going to be hard. It's going to break your heart as you're listening to it. People cry up when they hear these kinds of stories, and I know that so much of that pain just exists. And man, if I don't have to be serious, why the hell? Like I walk around and see these people that have just like a stick surgically inserted up their backside. Right, and they're walking around like
it's a thing.
That really is. It really is. And you cut a joke and they're like, "Oh, you're not professional, or you're not whatever." You're like, "You don't know a single thing about me, but I know something about you."
Travis, isn't it the beauty is we've designed our lives so we don't have to have sticks up our own asses, right? We get to be who we authentically are, and people, quite honestly, fucking jealous. Because I get to decide what I'm going to do, what I'm going to accept in my life. And when I'm going to get up, what I'm going to do during that day, I get to do all that. These people are on a clock and it's usually a company clock, right? So, they make comments like that and I get it. I mean, it's great to have humor in your life because our life is short. You might as well laugh. I mean, one of the things they say about men, what do women love about men? They love a guy that can make them laugh.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
You hit on something that's really cool because I wish I would have learned that sooner. Like if you ask the question, what do you wish you would have learned sooner? I mean, we could go on and on, but really you nailed it. I wish I would have learned sooner that I can say what I'm going to do. And I can say no. And I don't owe you an explanation. I can say no. And here's why. Oh, I'm not telling you why because it doesn't matter. I said no.
Right.
Or, and I don't know if it just comes with age or maturity or giving less shits about what people think about me. I'm not sure, but I feel like I'm constantly just making a decision and then rolling with it. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I don't know if it's age or what.
Works well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
if either of you read
no drama if I don't create any drama, like
have either of you read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck? I think it's like Mark Manson or something.
No, it's actually on my list. I have not read it yet.
It is fucking wonderful. And so it starts out like telling you like not to give a fuck because we give entirely too many fucks. We give a fuck about the guy walking a dog in our neighborhood. We give a fuck about whether the neighbor parked. We give a fuck about like someone that encroached on the stoplight when they stopped a little bit late, or like we give entirely too many fucks. And so the book runs you through all this, right? That it beats down your fuck meter or whatever that is. I just made it up right now. And it says this isn't designed to say you shouldn't give a fuck, but only give a fuck about the stuff that really matters.
Yeah, the ones that matter.
It really matters. Like I don't always do the same thing every day. I'm like Carol. You do what you want, you do what you need to. And I'll walk around and it was like, oh, must be nice. You're saying must be nice, like they don't have the same opportunity to build the life that I've built for themselves.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Oh, it must be nice.
By the way, but must be nice is also a difficult road. I mean, when you make the choices, to become an entrepreneur, you also run, the risk of the fact that you may not be bringing something in. Right.
Yeah.
So it is very risky as well. So there's a part of them that I would presume is jealous that you were willing to take the risk.
Well, and people are afraid to take risks because, I mean, let's just face it. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to fail, but it's inevitable. We're going to fail on whatever scale that looks like for you, parenting, your sobriety journey, just your physical fitness regimen, whatever. Like, as humans, we're going to fail, but are we going to fail forward and make decisions based on our failures? Or are we going to keep failing the same? So I failed a lot, but they're all different failures, and that's okay.
Yeah. So my boyfriend actually said it best. He goes, you're going to fail. All right. No matter what. But he goes, what's the one thing you can learn? And I go, fuck, I don't know. You'll survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a quote by Marianne Williamson that a lot of people have heard. I think it usually gets contributed to Nelson Mandela. But she says our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't deserve the world. And although failure is a thing a lot of people bounce off of, we really are scared to be titans in whatever facet that works for you in your life, to really crush life, to understand what your zone of genius is or what is it that makes you a titan, and fucking do it.
Yeah.
Fucking do it. I know the
and once you decide to do it, it's easier. It's easier to keep doing it because you're like, okay, I didn't die.
It is.
Nobody else
here.
died.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Been here. Yep.
And that felt awesome to, like it's kind of funny when when I run across somebody who in times past I would have probably judged them or said like, oh man, they've got some stuff going on. And now I have a lot more empathy for when I see people that are experiencing things that maybe they're projecting out something that's maybe not so pleasant. I'm not saying that they're off the hook for it, but I kind of get it. And I'm like, oh, and you've seen, I don't remember what movie it is, but there's a Adam Sandler movie and he's like, you're not mad at me, you're mad at your dad. That's kind of like, yeah. Remember he's like rollerblading and he's like, oh, I'm mad at my dad. Like, but I think about that, like, that's a real thing. Like, people all have a story and lots of layers to those stories. You're not just the one thing, you have a childhood, you have an adulthood, you have your parent journey, you have your career journey. And all of those little pieces and stories together make you who you are. And it's okay to have different phases and chapters in that story. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just learning, who am I really after the story's all said and done? Who am I when I lay down at night and close my eyes and say my prayers and get ready to go to bed? Like, did I present myself today as the person who I really am? Or am I being inauthentic? Like, was every encounter today the best? I hope to say yes every night, but that's not always true.
Sometimes we're a work in progress constantly, and always improving and going back to the whole what we're afraid of, right? And the wonderful quote that Travis just said is, we're more afraid of success than failure, because when we get to success, right, or what we view as success, will it be everything we anticipated it would be?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to say when I reach XYZ, that makes me successful, because I've reached lots of goals,
milestones.
And then I'm like, okay, well, that didn't make me successful. Maybe I need to try something else. And it's like, well, no.
Is achieving the thing, is that success?
Right.
Not.
Getting to the finish line is not success. It's a piece of it. You talked about being your authentic self. The problem with the question is there's not a one answer, right? Because there's so many different aspects of who we are, right? The people that, like the Travis that shows up on camera that's having fun and cutting jokes, isn't the same Travis when I'm sitting with my daughter and she's hurting, right? It's a different Travis. Neither one is inauthentic, but we all have these different slices of ourselves that come out in different times. The question I got challenged with is, I know that one of the parts of my personality is the Titan that's meant to be big and great and things, and I'm saying this on camera, realizing that I'm sharing it with people, right? And part of me is the jackass, the trickster, Puck, Loki, Kokopelli character that gives these false promises of fulfillment for a little bit of fun, right?
Yeah.
And that guy is great if he comes out every now and again. That guy is not great if he's in the driver's seat of my life. Right.
And being vulnerable and being willing to just be authentic. Like, something I've noticed in having, kids and teenagers is like, they're good bullshit meters. They, especially my teenage girls, like, they have called me on so many things and probably not even realized it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm either doing a really great job parenting them, or I'm doing a really bad job hiding my shit. But really, it's not even that. They just want something authentic. So if I tell them something like, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm working on, this is why I reacted that way, they're like, oh, okay, Mom. I see you and I hear you. Yeah, but for them to be old enough now to articulate and say, why wouldn't you just tell me that in the first place? It's like, holy crap. Like, this is huge. Like, having that willingness to be vulnerable. It's kind of a joke in my house, like, oh, Mom doesn't cry, and that wall is coming down. The more healing that I do, I'm willing to say, like, yep, vulnerability has gotten me further in my healing journey than any self-help book or any other thing that I've tried. And that's just it, is I had to quit trying. I was trying so hard and white knuckling through everything that I realized that's not helpful. I'm just
Val,
white knuckling
go backwards. Go backwards. Everything else wasn't working, so do it backwards again, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that seems to be a theme.
Well, and I think our kids are really good at that. I mean, these days, I think society, especially in school and what they're exposed to, is all about being real. And so when you say, like when I grew up, we'd ask why. Well, because I said so.
Yeah.
Okay. But you weren't allowed to go further. Right. I think the kids these days they can see the bullshit coming.
Oh, man.
And they're like
hardcore too.
I know. Just, you know what? Freaking tell me. Just tell me. And I think they feel like we're doing them such a huge disservice by quote unquote protecting them, by not telling them everything. And maybe it's that time where you just got to go, okay, fine. You know what? I'm telling you like it is, and whether you like it or not. But this is it.
Yep. And sometimes if I do that with them, they're like, Mom, TMI, stop. Like, I'm like, oh, too far?
Well, you can't have it. You can't have it both ways.
You asked me, I'm going to tell you. Yeah.
Right.
And especially when it comes to, I have teenage girls. So when you think about 13 and 18, my oldest just graduated high school.
And is that the one that wants to ride a motorcycle?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I'm like, I had to laugh because I remember telling my mom when I was like 16 or 17, I'm going to be a bull rider.
Oh my God.
She's like, my God, what? And I'm like, yeah, and you were not going to convince me otherwise. I was like, I'm going to the youth arena and I'm going to get on this bull and I'm going to ride. I remember my mom's face just being like, where is this kid coming from? Like, why? But tell me I can't do it and I'm going to do it. Now I learned very quickly, maybe I'm not cut out for bull riding, but I had to try it. Okay. That's a whole other story, but I love that she is like, yeah, I'm going to take this motorcycle course and I'm going to buy a motorcycle. And I'm just like, yeah, hell yeah. But then the mom part of me and the nurse part of me is like, oh God. But really, ultimately, I want her to try things. I want them to try things and do things and fail at things. And I hope she loves it. I hope that she has a long, happy life on that bike. Because obviously I wouldn't want anything other than her to be happy. But I think you have to just be smart about it too. Obviously, taking a safety course is smart.
Mm-hmm.
I've done something right because she's not just hopping on it and trying to figure it out. Which is what I did
great
with the bull riding.
economic.
It's terrible.
It's a great savings in cars, and it's better for the environment, and you get more miles per gallon, and really more smiles per gallon if you're having a good time doing it, right?
Yep.
You can't see the smile behind the helmet, but there's a whole lot of that going on.
Well, that's the how can you tell a happy biker? He's got bugs.
They're on a bike.
Oh Jesus! No. We wear full face helmets because honestly,
road bike riders do. Bikers do not.
Okay,
yeah, so no, like Harley riders do not. We call those skid lids because it's only on the top of your head. But here's the reality. I think we had Lucy on the show when we talked about this. Yeah. You are not going to fall directly on the top of your head.
Thank you.
Right?
That's what I say. Yeah. So my husband calls it a brain bucket. He's like, you're just going to have to get over it. I'm going to wear this brain bucket. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he's taught me a little bit about letting go too, because I can't control everything.
No. And if it brings them joy, you can't squash your
absolutely
joy.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I gotta ask Val, let's get into a little bit of your history and some of the trauma that you've been through. People that are willing to share that stuff, like both Carol and I have done on the show, it really gives people the permission to start sharing their own story and their own journey. And the more different stories that we hear, the better chance we're going to find someone that went through something that we did.
Yeah. That's probably the most eye-opening part of finally coming out with my story, was realizing that, holy shit, my story is not that uncommon. And it's heartbreaking because I don't want somebody else to go through what I've gone through. And, you think too for a time like, oh, well, people have been through so much worse, which is also something that I did to myself, which was comparing and kind of gaslighting myself. And like, oh, well, their trauma was so much worse than mine. I couldn't possibly, complain, which is also just another form of shame, that you have to peel back. But thankfully I'm past that. But I mean, I don't know how far you want me to go back into the story. I can kind of put it in a nutshell, because really what happened to me was horrific and tragic, but everything after was much worse than the actual trauma. So I was, it's true. And when I really go back and look at this through that lens of like, okay, I was 19. I was first duty station in the Army. Met a guy, was sort of dating him, I guess you could say. And I found out he was married, and I was like, what the heck? This ain't how I roll. So I'm going to end this. I had no reason to really be afraid of him necessarily. So I went to kind of break things off and get my stuff, leave a note, and he was on leave and came back a day early. So when I was leaving out of the house, he caught me in the doorway, and I could tell that he knew that I knew, and it was like not going to be good. So we exchanged words, but he locked the door and said, "You're not going anywhere." And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? I really, in hindsight, the more, even since I shared my story originally back in the fall, for the first time openly, I've even found more insight since then, just memories coming up and things that, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And this happened too. But I stayed in that house for, I think it was about 48 hours. I think it was 2 nights. Honestly, when you go through something like that, you know, it's funny because haters will say, well, what do you mean you can't remember exactly? Well, why don't you get raped and sodomized and then you have to tell your story?
Yeah.
Like
time changes, right?
I'm not gonna,
time. Yeah.
You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. I don't give any rats about that. So
such language on the show.
Rats. But so that experience,
what's the experience?
There was a moment. So the experience of, yeah, so I was raped and sodomized multiple times in this housing. It was in military housing. So the story was that he had a house because he had a child. So when he said, you know, I have a child, but, you know, I'm divorced, that's why I have this house. And I was 19 and I'm like, well, why do you have housing if you're single? But he had the house because he had a child. So they gave him the allowance. What really happened was that his wife moved to another state. He was supposed to be going to change duty stations. And long story short, he was actually moving away and his wife was already gone because she went ahead of him. So it wasn't that they were divorced or anything. He was actually about to have a second child with her, was calling me from Florida saying like, hey, when I get back, we're going to do this and that. And he was calling me from like a payphone in the hospital where his wife's having a baby. Like, I just didn't know. I didn't know. And I had a lot of guilt about that for a long time.
Tell us he's a dirtbag without telling us he's a dirtbag.
Right.
Calling from the payphone at the hospital. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, this is like 1998. Like, you know, nobody had cell phones. So he was calling me from the hospital payphone and I like didn't put it all together till later, but when he came back and I had found everything out and finally realized like, oh, I've been duped basically. I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm not about this. And I fully intended to tell his wife, like, I didn't think it was fair that he was doing that to her. And that's what set him off. And so I spent that whole time in his house. You know, he was drinking and I was trying to drink with him. Not really. I was trying to get him drunk enough that, yeah, okay, if he passes out, I can get out of here.
Leave.
Every time I would try to get up and leave, you know, he'd hold me down. And I thought, I got to get out of here. And the only way I'm getting out of here is if I go flat from my back to upright and running out the door. So I did that. I laid there and thought, okay, you have a choice. My mom came from a very abusive background. And I remember the stories of her telling me how she got away and the steps that she took. And I thought, I'm not going to repeat this. Like, I'm not going to put up with this and I'm not going to repeat this. So I did. I bolted and I was wearing a t-shirt and panties only, just running down the road in housing at like, I don't know, it had to be 4 something in the morning. It was dusky enough that you really couldn't see, but the sun was starting to peak up. But anyway, I ran out of the house and he chased me. And I got to the end of the road and there was an MP vehicle pulling up. So the military police pulled up. And of course, I'm just like, oh, like this must be God rescuing me, you know? And I turned around and he just makes a turn off into housing, turns the other way and nobody ever saw him. And they didn't ask me any questions. Like, I mean, I got in the car and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, take me to my barracks. Well, I was a medic there and I shared the barracks with the MPs. So I said, take me back to the medic barracks. So they knew exactly where to take me. But they never prodded or, I mean, I'm in the car with no pants on.
Yeah.
And I guess in their mind, it was, I mean, I don't want to say what someone was thinking, but I'm sure it looked odd that this young soldier's running out of the housing area with no pants on. So from the outside looking in, maybe I got caught by the wifey or something. I don't know. I've speculate. You can speculate all you want, but they didn't do anything. Didn't encourage me to report. Didn't even really show any concern.
What do you mean didn't encourage you to report?
They didn't. It was like nothing happened. They just gave me a taxi ride back to the barracks.
So I don't think Carol's familiar with how like sexual assault and stuff is like documented in the military. I think that's why she's asking.
Gotcha. Yeah. So immediately I knew I couldn't report it because, you know, obviously they're going to blame me. And let me back up a little bit. Prior to all this happening, I had been working, you know, I was a female medic. So anytime they had any kind of CID, which is the military police like investigation, they did all the sexual assaults and that kind of stuff. Anytime they had any of that, they had to have a female chaperone for the interviews. So I had been in several interviews of people reporting these things, and I saw what happened to them. I saw how they were treated. I saw that they weren't believed, and I was not about to go there and show my face, especially with people saying, well, we tried to tell you, you know, I was 19, for God's sakes. Like, so in hindsight, sure, could I change any of that? No, but had I reported, I don't know what that would have looked like or what that would have done, but I knew if I kept my head down and stayed away from them, that I could make it go away. And that's what I tried to do.
Could you stay away from them? Okay.
Well, yes and no. So it gets a little more complicated because after me, there was a girl there that was, I guess, interested in him. And he kind of very quickly moved on to her. And I thought, okay, this is weird. And I tried to warn her. I all but said that he raped me. I pretty much told her he was married. I told her all that stuff.
Here's the thing. You cannot tell another woman what happened to you, because you know what they'll say? You're just jealous.
So she was like, yeah, whatever. And then in the meantime, I actually met my husband now. I met him and we were stationed there together. So we were still on the same base with him. I never told him. So he didn't really know any of this. So whenever this other girl and him kind of got into it, she ended up getting pregnant by him. And we moved on, but she did come to me later and say, how did you get rid of him? And the only thing I could say to her was, you. Like, he moved on to you, which was, as a woman, is really heartbreaking that I couldn't do anything. And had I reported, could I have prevented other things? Because he ended up going to prison for something else unrelated, but you know,
it's really tough.
I feel like
it's really tough. I've seen, so I retired last year in 2022, and seeing how like the things have changed and more, and you know, morphed and grew over time is a lot different. I joined back in 2000, and the stories that Val is telling, like, that's exactly how it goes. And they're really not that different 20 years later. They really aren't.
No.
You have a couple of different reporting requirements. Like you can report, I don't remember the terminology. It's only been a year, but I can't remember the specific military terminology. But you can basically report it without telling anyone anything. And there's an open report that they'll open an investigation and go through and try to prosecute and all these things. And it's insanely hard to prosecute. It's insanely hard to keep quiet. And as much as they say things like that won't affect your career, based on what we know about the military, they 100%. Don't know how to handle you if you're not fully mission capable. If you're not fully mission capable, they really don't know what to do with you. And you end up getting poor reviews and poor evals. And then you get the rumor mill, and it's just awful.
And that's unfortunate, because with some of the work I've been able to do just recently, working with the Pink Berets, which is a nonprofit organization for female veterans that, you know, not all of our scars are on the outside. They're not all visible. So we try to meet with these women where they're at. And a lot of them have PTSD, not from MST, but the ones that do, their stories are just like mine. And the ones that reported, I have to say, it didn't go well for them. And it almost feels like, I mean, it's just so sad. I met an active duty soldier about a month ago. You know, she reached out to us and said she was worried about one of her soldiers who was assaulted by 3 service members. This just happened last year, assaulted by 3 service members. And she reported it. They are still awaiting to figure out what they're going to do with them. Meanwhile, she is being med boarded because she's not fit for duty because of her PTSD, and the uniform is basically triggering her. And she's still active duty.
Yeah.
And then they put her in a group with other veterans and other men that assaulted women. Like, what are we doing?
Oh my God.
So, and this is now. My stuff happened in 1998, 99. So what are we doing? We've made, I don't know all the answers, but I know that this is not right.
It's not working. Whatever they've tried to do, it's just not working. I had a gal that was working for me. This is probably the late late 2000s, like maybe mid, right, 2005, 2006. She was working for me, and it was very obvious that she had been suffering physical abuse at the hand of her husband. And she had walked into a closet, walked into an open cupboard door, fell on the stairs stuff. And I'm like, you need to report this. And she's like, she looked at me, she's like, I'm not going to report it, and you're not going to do it either. And if someone comes and asks me questions, I'm going to deny everything. I'm going to accuse you of something. And it's,
oh my God,
it's heartbreaking, because like even it's not a gender thing, it's not a guy or girl, but people that are close to people that go through something horrendous like this, there's literally nothing we can do but try to be there for the person. And that's not nothing, but it's not like if someone messes with my daughter, I can drive over and punch the guy in the face. I can't do that shit anymore, right? You just can't. So like as a parent, as a friend, as a whatever label you want to put on it, there's almost no recourse and nothing that makes this thing better. And it's just disgusting that it's that way.
Well, I don't think it's going to change until society changes, because it is like in the Asian culture, right? You can't really do anything. I mean, basically, if you report it to, say, your parents, right? They'd be just like, go home to your husband, and so you reach a point where you go, it's not even worth it anymore, and you just take it, right? And it sucks. I mean, you'd think in this day and age we'd have some way of resolving these types of issues, because it does leave scars, a lot of them.
Yep.
And you also, for Travis's sake, right? Like, you wanted to report it. You want to, if they're not willing, I mean, you can't. It puts them in more danger.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate that, I mean, I've even been told, well, that's what you get for being a female and joining in the army. What did you expect? Like,
what?
No, people say
people have that mindset.
Horrible things.
And
it's like, well, what were you doing to get in that situation? So knowing that all those things are going to be said, it's like, why would I report that? And so all I did was just bury it and just shove it down. I met my husband, within 6 months or so, we got married, and the poor man, he's still married to me now, thank God. But he didn't know what he was getting into, because he didn't know I do everything backwards. So
well, the curls weren't the clear signal to him that not everything was okay.
No, that was the day of when I straightened my hair all the time.
Yeah, you had to in the military. So
why?
Just a quick side note, only within the last 2 years have women been allowed to wear ponytails in the military.
Yeah. You had to keep it pretty much slicked back, and then there was an old trick where we put a sock in the back, so you had the perfect bun in the back. Yes, you had the perfect bun in the back. So my hair was always just taken from wet to straight back in a ponytail, so I didn't get to embrace the curls till later. But the after effects of that, because you just want to erase it and say, well, that didn't if I don't talk about it, then it didn't happen, and I'm never going to trust anybody again, and I don't have to, I'm never going to tell anybody. And so enter husband, and he's amazing, still is, but he didn't know what he was getting, because I really could only drink to push this down, and I was so fun. I mean, that's what I did. So I became party Val, and that was the only way in my mind at that time that I could escape what I know now is the pain of trauma. But I just buried it so far down that if you asked me, have you ever experienced sexual abuse or trauma, I straight up would tell you no. And not because I'm lying, but it was because that didn't happen to me. And if I didn't experience it myself, I would not believe you that it was gone. I blocked it out, went on about my business.
Mechanism.
Yeah. I went on about my business and kind of partied, drank, did all the things military life had to offer at that time. We were overseas a lot. We got deployed together. It was kind of interesting. That's a whole nother adventure. But when I got back to New York, Fort Drum, New York, I was like, okay, I'm spinning my wheels here. I don't want to live like this forever. Started going back to church and kind of vitalizing my faith, and like still not realizing that this was all pushed down and like gone. Like, if again, I'd been to counseling a few times because I had a lot of anxiety and depression. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And they would ask me that every time, and I would always say no. And it wasn't because I was lying. I literally just didn't see it that way, or it was completely gone. And so I started having a lot of physical problems, you know, sick call ranger problems, what we call it in the Army. So I was a medic who was running sick call, but I was always sick. And it wasn't that I was making it up. I really did have stomach pains. I really did have migraines. I had all these psychosomatic things that I know now that's what it is. But they can never find anything. And I thought, I am not crazy. I know that I'm having this debilitating 9-day long migraine. Ask my husband, like he's seeing this, but they could never find any reasons for it.
So for the people that don't know, can you share what psychosomatic is?
So psychosomatic is when you have, especially happens in trauma, but you have an event or something that you internalize. So the symptoms come out in a somatic way, which means physical way. So headaches, stomach pains, nausea, vomiting, those kinds of things, joint pains. A lot of people that have chronic pain diagnoses, I'm finding out, have had some kind of background history of trauma, something. So your body inevitably keeps that score, which is a fantastic book, by the way. I highly recommend.
Came up in our very last interview. Yeah, my wife and I have been through it. You know,
it is a hard book. I'm still trying to finish it, but it's it does kind of open the door to how we internalize these things. So when you start having all these psychosomatic complaints, so if you looked at me at that time, it's like, okay, you're 22, you're getting out of the military, you have migraines, back pain, stomach pains, ovary pains, uterus pains, all the things. Like, what is going on here? But I had pain. There was no doubt about it. So I got out of the military, I started working, started doing the whole school part-time thing. Time's going to pass anyway, so I'm taking one class at a time. Meanwhile, really just my mental health was not well, but I just kept going. White knuckle. Okay, next class. Okay, next thing. Oh, maybe we should have a kid. That sounds fun in the middle of all of this. So we ended up having our oldest child in 2005. So about that time, I found out that I did get accepted to the program for nursing school when she was probably like a year and a half. So meanwhile, everything essentially was going along fine as far as my definition at the time. Life was happening, going fine.
Yeah. So when did you actually get to where you started healing and addressing some of this stuff?
So about the time, so I was in nursing school, and we really were having like a lot of intimacy issues and things like that. And it was just like, oh, it's stress. Oh, it's because we had a baby. Oh, because of this. And this is, sorry, Travis, probably TMI, but it's just part of the story. I got to the point where sex was almost impossible because, again, it was a psychosomatic thing. Like, I would literally say, I don't know why my vagina is closing. It doesn't work. And so I went to doctor after doctor, and they would always say, well, do you want to take these antidepressants, or did you have trauma? And I would again be like, no, what are you guys talking about? Like, you're insane. There's nothing wrong, you know? And they obviously knew, but nobody cared enough to say, look, this can be a trauma response. Like, that didn't unlock anything. They never said anything. It was just like, well, but help you. Go to another doctor.
Most MDs
can't
don't know
help
that.
you. Yeah, they
no,
can't
exactly.
help
I know
you
that
until
now.
you admit
100%.
it. Yeah.
Yes, 100% know that now for sure. So they've been let off the hook for that. But
if anyone's listening to this that has heard like our other interviews, we get into this stuff where physicians are not willing to say that it's outside their area of expertise and just send you on to someone that can maybe help you. We've talked about this like ad nauseum as one of the things between my wife and her 42 surgeries and procedures, and like it's just
and that's the thing. Like, I kept having surgeries, can't figure out what's going on. You need to have this diagnostic lab, and no, let's do this and let's do that, and all this. You know, you have endometriosis, you have all this pain. Well, there's something called vaginismus, which basically is an anxiety disorder. So that means that there's nothing physically wrong with your vagina, but it's anxiety. So it clamps down, shuts off, nothing you can do about that. You need to have therapy kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, but why? Like, I still wasn't putting it together. So I'm in school, I'm learning about all this stuff. I'm in my 3rd semester of nursing school, and my nursing instructor was like, look, we're about to get into some psych stuff. If anyone's triggered, and I didn't even know what the word triggered meant at that time. I'm like, what is he even talking about? So if you get triggered, come see me after class, we can help. You know, it happens every semester. There's always somebody who has some kind of something. And I'm kind of like rolling my eyes like, all right, whatever. And so we started talking about conversion disorders and PTSD, and there was a whole section on MST, and I had never heard it called that before. And I didn't know, I just didn't know. So he said, and we did clinicals at the VA, at the mental health hospital was where we were doing clinicals. So we went there and we're doing these clinicals, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then all of a sudden I just started having dreams and flashbacks and remembering all of the stuff that happened to me at Fort Huachuca. And I was like, what is this? Problem. So I reached out to my instructor, and I was a mess because here I am in nursing school. I'm trying to finish school and all this is happening, and I can't have sex with my husband. I want to, but I can't. Like, this is a problem. And the only thing they're offering me is possibly having, you know, these dilation therapies and all these biofeedback stuff, which require you to be in a very vulnerable state to do. And I was not about to do that at that time. You know what I'm saying? Especially realizing that sexual trauma was like the trigger. So then I started remembering, like, oh my God, I was molested when I was a kid. Oh my God, I had, like, everything just kind of floodgated open. And I was like, I'm going to crumble. I'm going to kill myself. Like, I can't live with this. How do I reconcile this? But I have a kid now, and I have a husband, and all these things to do. So I started going to therapy, and she was great and kind of explained to me what about the psychosomatic. Like, once I started, I learned really quickly why these things were happening in my body, but I still didn't know how to connect the emotional to it. Like, I could tell you the story and just be like, yep, these are the facts that I remember.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any, like,
Western
connection
medicine,
to
right?
it.
Western medicine just does like, one. Eastern medicine does the other.
Yeah. So we did some therapy, and she's like, well, you know, you've reached like this point where you can't do anymore. And I drove home that day because she's like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, we have to get you. And this was before like EMDR therapy and stuff like that I know of. I was never aware of it at that time. So she's like, you're so disconnected emotionally. And I couldn't figure out how to connect to it. So anyway, I went for a walk with my family, and we turned the corner, and there was my rapist coming out of the Blockbuster, who, as far as I know, was supposed to be in prison, like all these things. And it was like instant.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Blockbuster is a video store back in the 90s. The late
oh
1900s.
My God, I cannot believe that we're talking about that.
The late
right
1900s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the late 1900s. Yeah. So we were on a family walk, and I just that day had left therapy, and I was like, okay, God, what do I do? Because I don't want to be this numb, but I am. Like, what do I do about this? And so we went for a walk, and we ran into him, and my body froze before I even knew what was happening. So when he came out of the Blockbuster, he pat my daughter on the head and opened the door for my husband, who they didn't know him or recognize him. And he got in his car with somebody else and some children, and they drove away. And I was on the sidewalk just panicking and pissing my pants, basically, and took off running to go home. And my husband's like, what in the hell is happening? And when I told him that was him, like, I don't know. I realized after that moment, like, that connected me to all of it, like all of the stuff that I couldn't reconcile and like really get through. You know, I don't know many opportunities for that to turn into a good thing for running into him. But I went back and saw my therapist, and we did kind of we snooped on him and found out, okay, we Facebook stalked him and looked up his prison records, and sure enough, he'd been in town for several months, and I had been thinking I was seeing him, but I thought I was like hallucinating. I really didn't know he was there. So of all the places he could end up in the same town as me, I mean, I can't make that up. Like, I don't know how to even reconcile that. But from that came a lot of deeper work, and it's kind of a roller coaster, up and down still. But I don't know if I would have ran into him had I would have ever connected to it emotionally the way that I needed it to start to really heal.
Our bodies and our minds and our persona, like, does a great job of protecting us in the moment. It really does. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons we can't have a full memory of some of these experiences, is because our body wants to keep us safe. The hardest part is that you've been disconnected. I've been dissociated from myself and my past and my trauma, and actually getting that reconnected and up and rolling, like, it's a thing. It's a whole thing. And we really appreciate you coming on and sharing this stuff with us. If you would take a minute or two, and if someone's sitting there and sitting on a big secret like that, or in denial or in protection, what would you say to those people? Could be men, could be women, could be children.
Yeah, anybody. Honestly, I would say you don't have to continue to live like that. It feels like that, and it really felt like that for me. I thought, how am I ever going to overcome this shame or be able to talk about my story? And once I heard someone else talking about theirs, I realized I'm not alone. And if I can do it, you can do it 100%. And whatever that journey looks like for that person or for you, I know for me, it would have been more beneficial to hear this from someone else that has walked it. Like, you are loved, you are valuable, you do have worth, regardless of what you think. I felt really ashamed of myself for a long time and didn't feel worthy of the affection that my family was trying to give me, because I was carrying so much shame, but I didn't know how to put language to that at the time. And so I would just say, allow yourself to have that healing time and to put some language, like figure out what that looks like for you, to put language around how you're feeling, because I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, because my body was actually betraying me in my mind, but really it protected me. It did what it had to do so that I could be sitting here today, because I don't want to kill myself today. And I don't want to let a moment go by that somebody else, there are so many people who can't handle these kinds of things and they kill themselves. Let's just say it. They commit suicide and it's too much. And I don't ever want anybody to feel like they have to be in that position. I've been there. Like, it's not pretty, but you can be sitting on the other side. You have to reach out to your people. You have to be vulnerable. Those are all hard things. I'm not saying broadcast it out in Walmart, but find your people. Like, that's important.
Absolutely.
It's very important.
It really is. I remember when we met in Houston, and I brought my daughter along, and she's got a big old belly right now. She is a tiny little petite girl that is very much pregnant.
It's precious.
Her belly is enormous, and it's so wonderful. But we get the chance to talk with you and meet with you down in Houston. I really appreciate the care and compassion that all the ladies down there and yourself showed, to me and my daughter. And really,
she's sweet.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, she's hilarious. Her and Tia like bopping around the whole place together. But thank you so much for sharing. We know just
thanks for having me.
How hard those stories are to share. We really do. I wish this was in person so I could just step up from this and give you a big old hug. But
thank you.
As it is, we're a few miles apart, and Carol's a couple time zones away. But hey, if you listen to this and you found Val's story compelling, or you want to reach out to her and maybe show her a little love, you can connect with her on Instagram at SnarfyRN. That's SNARFYRN. SnarfyRN. You can connect with Val. Maybe she'll even give you a second to share the story of how she really got that name and that Instagram handle.
Yes. Well, thank you guys both so much for listening to me today and giving me the opportunity. I hope that it will help somebody, even if it's just one person.
That's all for this episode of Titan Evolution Podcast. We hope this no-holds-barred conversation opened your eyes on what it takes to live a genuinely happy life according to your own terms. Now that you've treated yourself to such a refreshing discussion, You cannot listen to nonsense content anymore. Be sure not to miss an episode by subscribing to the show at TitanEvolutionPodcast.com. Don't forget to share the word so more people can be enlightened, informed, and entertained. Thank you for listening.